of Corona from the booksellers, Jobs and Books. I'm Tom Tivnan, Managing Editor of the Bookseller. Thanks so much for joining us. The reason we're doing this webinar is that it goes without saying the world is in a difficult time right now. It's a difficult time for the books world, and therefore a very difficult time for those looking to break into the industry. So the next hour, our panel of experts are going to give us tips and advice on how, if you are an entry-level candidate, you can navigate the choppy waters that are coming ahead. On our panel, we're lucky to have three people who really know their onions in this space. There's Suzy Astbury, who is the MD of Inspired Selection, one of the UK's leading publishing recruitment firms. Hi, Suzy.
Hello, thanks for having me.
You. And Helen Firth, who is Head of Resourcing at Penguin Random House, which of course is the UK's biggest trade publisher. And you can tell Helen's from PRH because she has a penguin behind her. Hi, Helen.
Of course. Hello, nice to see you all.
And Alexa Shoen, who is a job coach, once described as the internet's leading confidant for panicking job seekers, which is apropos at the moment, I guess. And her book, #EntryLevelBoss, is just out from Scribe UK. There you go. And coming out with St. Martin's in the US quite soon. Hi, Alexa.
Hi, so great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Before I go on to all the questions, a little bit of housekeeping. I should say a lot of the questions we are going to cover over the next hour or so, 45 minutes, have already come in from you guys via Twitter and email. So thanks so much for sending those in. But you can ask questions during the session via the Q&A feature at the bottom. It might be at the bottom, you might have minimized it, but there you go. At the bottom or the live chat. But if you do ask a question, please could you select all attendees and panelists so that the moderators can see it and send it along to us. I should also say that if you have to duck out of this session early, shame on you, but there you go. Or if you know someone who might benefit from watching it, we are going to put it on our website quite soon. We'll tweet that link out as soon as possible. There's a sense. Right, well, let's get stuck in, shall we? I guess before we get into a lot of the nitty-gritty stuff we are going to talk about, maybe we should kind of just set the landscape now, set the stage for where we are at the moment. How has coronavirus affected recruitment at the moment? How is it going to affect in the short term, and maybe kind of look longer term? And maybe Suzy could take this to kick off because she's right at the coalface of this sort of thing.
Well, yeah, absolutely, Tom. Very happy to. We're speaking to all sorts of publishers currently, not just in the trade, but scientific, technology and medical journals publishers, academic publishers, educational publishers, and all are facing lots of change, lots of barriers that they've had to overcome to make their businesses continue to function remotely. And first of all, like, congratulations to all of them for being so agile and quick to get everybody connected and working from their own houses. It's not easy in any creative industry to do that with the types of programming that you need and things like that. But I think it's been remarkable how adaptable and agile we are as an industry. But just to kind of give a brief overview as to what's happened. Obviously, none of us saw this coming. None of us could have imagined it. And in the short term, what we have seen is that business has contracted in terms of recruitment roles. A lot of the live roles that we had on during March have, so this is a sort of overview of all the different sectors, have now gone on hold. They haven't been cancelled, they've just been put on hold till we can first of all catch our breath, get our people working from home, and then figure out what is in front of us. So it feels like confidence has completely sort of gone from the market, and there's a set, you can look at all the kind of jobs boards, there are not many jobs on there at all. The only jobs you will see coming through will be those that are business critical, maternity covers, temporary roles, that kind of thing, because life does go on, and this is something I will repeat repeat later on down the line. But so that is the state of affairs right now. But in terms of where we are seeing that we feel that we have either hit the very bottom or we're very close to hitting the bottom of where we are, because we are now at the stage where, as a business, people are gathering momentum once again, trying to figure out what might happen after this, in terms of what the landscape is coming out of this. So what retailers are out there, and what are the needs of the business moving forward. It's given us a real jolt into action in many ways, in terms of the types of products and our distribution channels, and how can we continue to have business continuation when something like this happens. And I think what we'll see is an uplift in recruitment again coming out of it. So mid to long term, I don't think people should panic right now, because there is going to be recruitment needs. They might differ from what there was previously. We might not be replacing like for like roles. We might be looking at slightly different skill sets, that kind of thing. But I think we're just in a period of uncertainty. There's a lot of change happening very, very rapidly. It will mean recruitment will come back, and that will be one of the first things we'll see, I think, to come back. I've got loads more I could say on this, but I'm conscious that it's not just my stage. So, yes, short term is contracted, but it will come back mid to long term, and we can see some confidence and some interesting conversations happening. And the last thing is to say that scientific and medical publishers in particular are key in this period, and they certainly are continuing to recruit, because we need to get the research published, and they are basically going to save us. So good on them.
Helen, I just want to perhaps maybe pick up on that. I'm going to throw it over to you. That's, mid to long term, Suzy says it's going to come back up. Do you share that sort of optimism?
Yes, definitely. I think, as Suzy said, none of us were expecting this, and for this to be such a huge impact on the businesses. And I think what's really important to consider is, with recruitment and new roles and people coming into the business, we've had a huge change. A lot of our roles have gone on pause as well, and people that follow our Twitter and social channels would have seen those updates. But it impacts on every single colleague in our business as well. So they are impacted by family news or situations, or people that are isolating because of health risks. They're schooling their children at home as well. And historically, we come from an industry where we're very office-based, we're very people-based, we're paper-based, and actually to try and move, over 2,000 people all to work from home within the space of 3 weeks is a huge achievement. So that's the here and now, is kind of looking after the health and well-being of our colleagues. But actually already we're having conversations around, and we'll probably talk about this more. And again, like Suzy, I could talk to you for hours about this, but around what is our future of work, and how we can look to that, and how we can still have all our internships and our schemas and everybody else in the business, but maybe it'll look slightly different to what it has done in the past. So very positive from our perspective, but it's just going to take a bit of time to get to that point.
Yeah. And maybe I'll throw this over to Alexa. During this time, do you think that the essentials of the job, way people search for jobs, or how the job should be done, has changed in any way? Is it a huge tectonic shift?
Oh, I mean, of course, but we're all experiencing huge tectonic shifts. I think what both Helen and Suzy just said, and which I will remind everybody out at home, is remember that everybody else is stuck at home too. There's not some magical version of the publishing industry that is not sitting in their own apartment right now. And so it's interesting to hear both Suzy and Helen talk so much about the business cases. And something that I've been telling so many people in the last few weeks is, there are a lot of different tactics and strategies, and I specialize with kind of how to put yourself out there and how to explain that you're the right candidate. But if there's something that you can do and really pick up on, especially from these two amazing women that I'm with today, and also from you, Tom, is business has changed in the publishing world. And especially as an entry-level candidate, if you can start figuring out how you're going to be able to provide value on day one, and not just like, oh, I'm hoping to get an internship so I can keep learning, but I'm actually going to learn a lot about Zoom and how to run Zoom meetings. And so then I could provide that value to an entire publishing team. Or I bet that Helen is really struggling with like how to do interviews online, and maybe she needs help scheduling interviews. And maybe I could ask her, don't all 300 of you email Helen and offer to be her scheduling assistant. But these types of examples, if you can think of little ways that like the world has changed, and I have this really interesting idea about how to do things in medical publishing, right? You can feel free to put yourself out there, and that's going to be how you distinguish yourself as a candidate right now, for sure.
Yeah. Maybe we should get down to some of these nitty-gritty questions that have been thrown in. A lot of people are kind of, probably most of them recent grads, are kind of thinking about, oh, how I can get a head start on job searching now, when obviously there's a pause all around the industry. What are your thoughts on that, Suzy? How besides obviously signing up with Inspired and Selection, of course, but
yeah, I mean, of course, that is the thing to do. No, in all seriousness, though, it's been sort of heartbreaking in the last couple of weeks, the amount of conversations we've been having with genuinely, panicked and massively anxious candidates about the future. And I can't reiterate enough that this is a temporary situation. It will not stay like this, but you sort of need to shift your focus off actually applying for internships or jobs right now. I'm not saying stop altogether, but there just aren't going to be the volume that you're looking for, and it will sort of fuel that anxiety if you keep looking for these jobs that just aren't going to pop up. I would suggest instead just to make sure you are signed up to the alerts. So if something does come up, it will email you. But really, to get ahead, I loved that advice just then, in terms of, think about what is going to add value to this company, because I think coming out of this, we're going to look at a really different kind of approach. I think publishers are going to be looking for really commercially focused people, in terms of understanding what the industry's just been through and how it's going to thrive, not just survive, in the next 18 months. And that's really difficult at entry level. But if you keep in touch with these kind of conversations, you'll start to get your own kind of views and opinions, and then sort of figure out how you can bring that to the table. So being able to talk about your problem solving skills and fixing things, and your flexibility, your adaptability, how you can plan things, how you're organized, think digitally, like what's new. Zoom, for example, Zoom is new and everyone's talking about it. Kids are talking about it. It's the next big thing. What's FaceTime anymore? That was centuries ago, kind of thing. So that's what I say is, like, so don't panic that there aren't jobs to apply for, but keep upskilling and keep part of the conversation.
Yeah. Helen, would you sort of agree that what are your advice for people right now, like at this point?
Yeah, so following on from Suzy's point as well, with the skills that you can bring, is a lot of the time we're so focused on editorial, and we're so focused on those kind of skill sets traditionally, that actually when you come and work in the office for the first time, things like the G Suite or the MS Suite, like get yourself trained up on Excel and things like that, things that we don't talk about openly. We talk about all the wonderful writing, but actually on a practical level, there's other skill sets that you need just to be able to kind of get used to working in an office environment. And those things, even though really simple, if they stand out, actually that's a huge credit and a huge asset that you could bring to the team. The other thing, and there's, again, we could talk hours about this, but the other thing which is quite interesting is, even though at the moment, as Suzy said, there aren't the amount of opportunities there, as Suzy said, it's a temporary thing. Use this time we've got like how many, over 150 imprints. We've had some real successes in this time when people are in isolation and they're looking for content to engage with. So look and find out where the successes have been, for example, with Us and Children's, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse, and the imprints that they're related to, so that when those jobs do come up, people always ask around, you know, how do I make my covering letter stand out, etc. Is do your research now, so when the roles come up in those specific imprints, you can show that you've done the research and that shines through in your covering letter, because that will make you stand out on an application. There's 2 points. I could go on, but that's probably enough for now.
So would you want to jump in as well? What is your advice as from a job coach's perspective, what people should be doing in this sort of lull?
So I think the covering letter and the doing your research part is so key. Something I say a lot is, like, when you're just starting out in your career, you're obsessed with trying to decide whether or not you're interesting, but actually the thing that you need to do is be interested. It sounds so cheesy, but you need to be interested in the company that you want to work for, a publisher, or the industry in general, right? I mean, it's a lot of people want to go into publishing just because it sounds sexy, or they secretly want to be an author, but they're going to like try to go into publishing instead. And that's totally okay. Like, that's a relatively good reason to be attracted to the industry. But there's so many things aside from editorial, to Suzy and Helen's point. You could be someone who's, you know, on the sales team, or you could be someone who's the account manager, or not even just an editorial assistant, but like the number of people as an author that I've met at St. Martin's Press and at Scribe Publications and, you know, and HarperCollins India now. And like, I had no idea this many people worked in publishing, but if I wanted to go into it right now, the first thing that I would do is try to get the lay of the land and see like what even goes on inside a publisher. And I want to really explicitly say that, like, it's okay if you don't know all those answers, especially when you've just graduated from uni. A lot of times you feel like getting hired is another test that you're supposed to be passing, right? And like, okay, I need to get like a good grade on this. But it's okay if you kind of go and look at like all the different people who work at Penguin on LinkedIn, right? And you're like, oh, that's the, like, you know, sales account coordinator. Like, what does that even do? And something that you could do aside from upskilling, which I'm sure we'll talk about more in the next few minutes, is you could send a really nice email to whoever the sales account coordinator person is and say, hi, like, my name is Michelle and I just graduated and I think that I want your kind of job, but I actually truly don't know what you do 8 hours a day. Like, here's what I think that you do all day. Is that right? And like, it's okay to have those conversations with people and to be interested in how this industry works. You don't have to feel intimidated and like we're all speaking grown-up gibberish. Like, you can ask questions. It's totally okay.
Yeah. Why don't we talk about upskilling right now? Because we touched on it already a couple of times. And probably the biggest question people have emailed and tweeted is about, will this crisis kind of put the emphasis on some other skills? Or perhaps they should have been working on those skills already, but will things change? What do you advise for sort of upskilling? Maybe Helen could take that first.
Yes, so we talk a lot about publishing and editorial, and we've touched on this already around the different areas. And I think after this, we're going to see growth in different areas, as well as, you know, the traditional channels as well. So we have within Penguin, we have an audience insight team that analyse all the data that our readers and the content that they're consuming, and then bring that back in to tell a story to us internally around, for our publishing teams, around the trends and what people are engaging with and what they're going to be reading in 3, 6, 9, 12 months time, so that we can ensure that our lists are reflective of that from a sales perspective. So anything online and technology wise as well, something that maybe we don't talk about enough in publishing, is that we've got about 180 people that work in our technology team supporting all the publishing systems that we use, both internally and with our clients as well. In finance, we've got to get smarter. We're going to be hiring further, you know, in our finance teams as they grow and develop as well. So I mean, again, I could talk too much, so I'll stop now and let somebody else. But that's an overview for you.
Suzy, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I think where people are going to get left behind is a lot to do with a little bit of what Alexa was saying there, like the authenticity of the approach. So you can't, you know, if you say I love reading, that's not going to get you a job, you know. So I just wanted to just touch on that bit. You've got to be genuinely excited about this industry, and there are so many articles coming through, and like in terms of trend spotting, there was an article today that, you know, crime's going to be massive in the next sort of 18 months again, and it did take a bit of a dip 6 months ago kind of thing. So publishers are going to be interested in that on the trade side sort of thing. But in terms of the types of skills, I think again, those analytical skills, the Excel skills are really, really important. I think there's going to be a big growth, for example, in educational publishing. How quickly did those educational publishers have to get their content online so teachers could teach their kids on Zoom or whatever platform? You know, those edtech startups, they're going to be huge, and maybe there'll be a bit of acquisition in the traditional publishers to get more e-learning into their portfolios, to diversify. I think a lot of companies will diversify what they're doing, so that is, again, the emphasis is going to be on those technology and technical skills, which anyone can do. You don't necessarily come out of university with, you don't have to have come out of university or gone to university with them. But I think looking at developing your coding skills, there's so many free coding courses out there. Your Excel skills, those kind of things would help massively with that. And I'm sure there's lots of companies, not just in publishing, where you can again just sort of shadow what they're doing. Gaming companies, TV companies, etc.
Yeah. Alexa, do you have anything to add about?
Yeah, I think that these are all fantastic suggestions, and I'm going to pipe up and say that you don't have to write down a list of all 25 skills that Helen and Suzy just said and then go learn them all. Because I know you guys didn't mean that one person should do all of them, but sometimes when you're young in your career, you're like, cool, coding, excellent. Like, I'll be a genius at Excel, then I'll learn Mandarin, and then I'm going to like learn how to build a computer from scratch, and this is going to get me an editorial assistant job. So if you are interested in any of those arenas, all of those are super, super valuable. But what I'll just say is start with just like one little baby skill first. And so a great way to do that is to look at job descriptions. Maybe Suzy and Helen both have some that they could, you know, send off to you or whatever. And you say, okay, like it says here that they use this kind of like software system when they're uploading manuscripts to then send out to like sub-publishing. What, like, there's all these like parts of publishing we don't know about, right? Okay, so what is that software program? And then could you go look on YouTube and see what you could learn about that software program? Like just that one thing should take you 3 weeks. Like that would be a really interesting skill as an entry-level candidate to come in and be like, I heard that when you guys upload manuscripts, you use this software, and so I went and taught it to myself. Like that one thing. Like, you don't need to learn how to be a software developer. You just need to learn like that little baby skill, and all of a sudden, like that person compared to the person who's like, I really like reading, when our internship's coming back, like night and day.
Fantastic. Good point.
Thanks, Suzy.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So one of the things that's obviously not available to anyone in the time of Corona is face-to-face networking. How do people kind of manage that to keep up with the people that they should be trying to keep up with? Obviously, social media is probably the first port of call, but what are your tips for social media kind of savvy? I don't know, maybe Alexa, you kick off with this?
Yeah, so first of all, I think it's kind of an awesome time for networking, because I think the word networking sometimes makes us think of like sitting in like a weird like hotel lobby bar drinking warm white wine, and you're like wearing a suit that's too big for you and everyone's got name tags on, but luckily we can all just drink warm white wine in the privacy of our own homes, or cold, you know, whatever your flavor is, but with networking right now, so much of networking, especially in publishing, was already happening online. and it's happening in people's Twitter DMs, or, you know, people emailing each other. And the one thing that I'll highlight, and I'll be interested to see what Suzy and Helen have to say about this, because I could ramble about networking for ages, is it's not just a like, oh, maybe I should reach out to somebody. Like, it's a mandatory part of the job search. Because the studies that I see coming out, especially of America, but also here in the UK, are like something like 60 or 70% of jobs, all the jobs in the world, don't actually make it on to LinkedIn, don't necessarily make it on to Inspired, or don't make it on to Monster.com or Indeed, because somebody knows somebody who knows somebody whose friend just graduated from university and they're a great candidate, and maybe those roles get filled ahead of time. And yes, nepotism is crazy and the job search is not always like perfect and fair, but networking, like, you can go and introduce yourself to strangers and it's totally okay. You don't need to know the right people right now. What you need to do is go and find the right person and say, for example, that thing about like, I heard you're a sales coordinator, I think that's what I want to do. And just try to get like some sort of information from those people is the first sort of just like baby step in. I know it can be really, really overwhelming. It is like half of what this book is about. So I'll stop rambling and leave it to Suzy and Helen to tell you more about it.
And
You have a book coming out, do you?
That's right. That's right, Tom.
Sorry, go ahead, Suzy.
No, I was just going to say, I think I agree with most of what you said there, Alexa. But I think it's a sort of, I think as an industry, we are trying to move so far away from nepotism and into a world where we are breaking down the barriers to become much more inclusive and are diverse as an industry, because we haven't been. And I almost think, if there's a positive from COVID, that maybe this is it, that we've proven to ourselves how agile we can be as an industry. And, you know, that, yes, okay, we're not always going to work remotely, but it does work. And that we can take those risks now of hiring people from sort of different, yeah. But what I loved about what you said was that element of networking and adding that to an application is just beautiful. It's a beautiful marriage, because you're getting under the skin of that company or that role, because that is what you want to do, and that's so compelling. It would be hard to turn away versus somebody that you've known for 10 years. I totally agree. And I think that's what people need to bring, something extra to the table. I've totally forgotten what the original question was now, but I think, is that okay?
That was awesome.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. And to follow on from Suzy and Alexa as well, is that inclusive hiring is extremely important. I'm very passionate about it. Part of the reason why I was offered the opportunity at Penguin and came and joined this business is to provide an equal opportunity for everybody, and to think and look at and include different voices throughout our application process. So all of our roles now, and actually since I've been there, but it's just really important that actually everything is advertised, because you need to ensure that we are reaching, you know, as many people as possible to give them the opportunity to come and join us. And I think that's really important. And there's lots of things we can talk around, you know, the wording, the way we word adverts, the way we phrase adverts to ensure that they're gender neutral, things like that, because some areas of the business, their role adverts can be quite male driven and others can be quite female driven. So it's about merging the two together and making everything inclusive. And that's really important for me and the rest of our colleagues at Penguin as well.
I think I'm just going to pipe up to respond to that.
Yeah, sure.
That's so absolutely incredible what both of you said about, you know, I know that publishing has had diversity issues in the past, and I know that it's so important to people in publishing to start solving those. And I will just say also, and I'll say it as the American in the room, because I have lived in the UK a long time, but I'm not necessarily deeply ingrained into the class structure here and the kind of different nuances. But I did my master's in Leeds, and I have been around this country a long, long time. Part of that is going to be on the candidates, whoever you are out there who's listening. Like, you're allowed to go introduce yourself. Like that I think is my number one sort of thing that I want to leave you with, is just because you didn't go to Oxford or Cambridge, or just because you didn't grow up in West London, or just because you're like, you know, this instead of that, or your parents shop at like Tesco instead of Waitrose. This country is wild. So like just because any of those things are true for you, it doesn't mean that you're not welcome in this industry, but you have to go and put yourself out there and say all these amazing things like, hey, I'm a really compelling candidate. Like, I want to introduce myself. And because Helen and Suzy are like, they're out there looking for you, and like they want you to kind of come and say hello, and everybody else in the industry does as well. And it's totally okay for you to do that. So yeah, you can, that's what I mean by you can like know anybody on the internet, is like you can go and Twitter DM somebody or send an email, and you can do your part to put yourself out there.
Totally.
Obviously, getting into publishing is quite difficult, and one of the pathways to entry-level jobs has been traditionally work experience and paid internships. Obviously, those at the moment are difficult to come by or impossible to come by. What should people do in the interim? Will those come back, first of all? And what should people do in the interim? Would you like to take it, Helen?
I could definitely make a start on that one.
Yeah.
Yes, certainly, because obviously we have our extensive work experience program, we have our internships, and we've had our scheme, all due to be running this summer, right about now.
Mm-hmm.
And this, in this point of time, we had to make the really difficult decision to hold off running internships and the scheme. And at the moment, we've got work experience on pause as well. And the reason being is because, and we touched on this earlier, is the fact that we were in crisis mode. You know, we were just trying to get people at home to have a laptop to work on, or a chair to sit on. So that was the main focus, was ensuring the well-being. But actually, I think what it's really important for everybody on this call to remember is that we, you know, are, to quote our mission, we make books for everyone. You know, we make books for everyone. So to make books for everyone, we need to ensure that we're hiring the best talent, that the talent's constantly coming through our doors to enable us to do that. And our colleagues are the most important thing, as you know, for our business. So therefore, worst case scenario, if we're all working from home for the rest of this year, I mean, I'm not suggesting that for one moment, and I think we'll find out more about that over the next few weeks. We still need to have people engage with us, and people joining us, and people getting exposure. So we're currently working on ways that we can adapt our processes and adapt our work experience or interns and scheme to enable that to happen in a new working environment, whatever that might look like. And that comes down to the same thing with our job hacks as well. You know, they're everybody on site together, but what might that look like in the new normal, when we don't know what the new normal's like yet? But we're planning that, because talent is so important for us, and it's so important to have people joining us and getting exposure to our business to continue the great work that we, and other publishers as well, you know, that we all do. So that's where we are with internships, scheme, and work experience. More to come.
Okay, great.
It makes me so happy, Helen.
Yeah, so positive.
Yeah, definitely. It's the most important thing. We need talent, and we need to engage and develop talent, and that's through these programs.
I think it mirrors entirely what businesses are doing as well. So, like I was saying at the beginning, you know, we've had to very quickly shift from normal life to, you know, we don't know what normal life is going to look like after this, and it's almost too soon to kind of answer how it's going to be and when it's going to be, and we do need some more information. I think there's a big announcement on Sunday which will give us a little bit more clarity in terms of where we are in businesses. But I totally agree, and lots of my other clients are saying the similar things, which is, you know, we're not going to stop hiring, because if we stop hiring, we stop evolving. You know, you don't, and this is a creative business. You need new ideas, you need new people coming in, new energy, you know, new skills to help you evolve. You know, and if, so for example, if publishers stopped hiring authors or commissioning authors, that kind of thing, then the whole process would stop. And I know for certain that all the publishing leaders across the landscape want to succeed and get back on track as far as they can.
Yeah.
So they won't stop hiring.
I'm gonna repeat a question that was asked, but it's quite self-serving, I should say. And and I'll answer.
How do I get a job at the bookseller?
Well, we're not hiring at the moment. But it's how can you keep up with the industry when interaction is curtailed? And well, you could look at the bookseller. You could look at hashtag jobs and bookseller and get our newsletter for our jobs newsletter, which is free every Friday. Our morning briefing is free. You don't have to get a full subscription if you're a job seeker. And yeah, we have a full subscription package for new graduates coming out. So keep an eye on that. Sorry, that was very painful for me to do that self-promotion, but there we go.
You got through it, Tom.
Yeah.
I think it's an excellent idea. I think it's really good.
It's awesome.
But seriously, is that kind of one of the key things, is to just try to make sure you're up to date with what's going on, even when it seems that everyone's, not working or stepping away.
It's a great opportunity while you've got this extra time on your hands to do so much more research, whether it's DMing someone on Twitter or looking at Penguin Random House's careers page. There's so much content on there. If you want to actually properly understand the roles of people, I think you have several videos going into depth. There's a day in the life of a editor. It's just brilliant. There's also things like the SYP. They've also, they're a group of volunteers, but in effect are running a business, and they have maneuvered themselves into sort of the online event space as well, because they want to continue providing fresh content. So they've got new podcasts coming out. They're doing videos, things like that, and that is loads of really good information for the entry-level candidates. So that's a really good resource. There's Borough Book Bash. Now I am on Borough Book Bash, so it's a little bit of a plug, but basically we've just launched today, funnily enough, our first online social event. So that's the last Thursday of May. And just join us on Zoom for a drink, basically. But that's a nice little networking, and it is quite sort of entry to mid-level type thing.
Yeah. An interesting thing that a few people wrote in about and asked about is how do you kind of represent how do you represent furloughing or being out of work because of the COVID virus on your CV and your covering letters? How do you go about that? It's very interesting nitty-gritty thing, and I wonder if any of you guys had any thoughts.
In what context do they mean, Tom? Is it if
they've lost
on furlough?
Yeah, and they've lost it, or perhaps lost their job, or they've come out of university and can't get a job for a while. How do you kind of, I know that's a thing a lot of people hiring look at as gaps in employment history, obviously.
I will pipe up because I have really
please.
strong opinions about this, because the gaps in employment history thing, it is true, but it also, I think, is out of date in a lot of ways. Like, we used to talk about the career ladder 40 years ago, and I'm going to go get my first job at Penguin, and then I'll be at Penguin for 50 years. And there are people who still do that, absolutely. But the data of today's graduates says that today's graduates are probably going to have about 12 different jobs before they turn 40. And also we're in an unprecedented global pandemic. And so the thing that I would just pipe up to say is there is no shame in the fact that you are looking for work. And there's no shame in the fact that you've been furloughed. I find that so many job seekers want to immediately pipe up and just come forward with all the reasons why they shouldn't be hired. And they're more obsessed with hiding all their faults than they are with, figuring out how they could upskill or figuring out how they could put themselves out there. Don't worry about the furlough thing. It is okay. It's, a nuanced situation, especially maybe if you secretly would consider going back to that employer, from a kind of legal perspective, but don't worry about it. It's really going to be okay.
Yeah. I'll echo that as well. Don't worry about the furlough point at all, in the slightest. We will, all organisations, or most organisations have been using the furlough scheme, and I know firsthand that it's no reflection on any of the talent. So please don't worry about anything furlough related.
Yeah, it's exactly the same as when we went through the sort of last recession. Not that we're in recession per se, but it looks likely that we will be in a period of this, and so there, you know, there is likely to be for us to see this more regularly on CVs. But I think, just going back to your point, Alexa, I always push back now on clients with the CVs that are coming through. You know, there is still an old school view of this person's had too many jobs, and I think we need to really challenge that. And at Inspired we do, because we meet the person and we see their skills and we see what value and what impact they're going to have on that business. And I think it's got to be more about the person than that doesn't fit my criteria because they've had too many jobs. So I mean, I do think we've got a responsibility to revisit the way we are hiring as well.
Yeah, I think that's so correct. And you know what I always say to candidates, because it can feel so personal, right, is like, if they can't see that you're a good candidate, and to be fair, maybe you're not a good candidate, but like if you're really, really compelling, right?
Yeah.
You know, and you're in this situation that Suzy's describing, like, like that's on them if they decide to pass you over. Yeah. Like if they're just looking to check boxes, like you didn't want to work for them anyways, you know, and that can be hard to hear or to wrap your head around when you really, really just want a job. But you don't want a job with somebody who doesn't want you. Like, I promise.
And I think to those candidates as well, we have a responsibility to feed back and say, look, you're just not sticking to anything. So you're coming across as flighty, and that is not a good thing. So you need to pick something and stick at it, you know, to not necessarily at the same company, but there's a difference, isn't there, I think, between the two.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. And I think, I don't know, that like the reason that I can sort of jump up and start defending people who have had like lots of short stints is because we see this phenomenon now where it's really hard to get your first real proper entry level job, like that real like on payroll for the first time, like I'm in the industry, like I'm on salary. So we see a lot of people who got the 3-month internship and then the 6-month grad scheme, but they didn't hire anybody, but then they go back into a 3-month internship and then like they really are trying. And those are the ones where I'm like, we can't say no to those candidates because they're trying to stick it out. And those people are not doing anything wrong. They've just probably had some bad luck, as opposed to what you're describing, which I do agree with that for sure.
And this is where I think it's very difficult in recruitment due to volumes for people looking for jobs, and this is what I'm very passionate about. And I think it's really important for us, as you know, Alexa and Suzy have mentioned as well. Everybody's individual, so therefore everybody has a different story to tell, and it's how you tell your story and show what value you've added that's really important, rather than, you know, have you moved through jobs. There's lots of people have different backgrounds, different reasons for it. Some people, you know, that may not have stuck things, they may be too flighty, and other people may be trying to get in. So I think when you as candidates are applying for roles, make sure, you know, you need to tell your story and show your story on your CV.
I think we're about 45 minutes through, and I think it's time to turn over to questions from the floor, so to speak. And I think I have to address this first of all, because it seems to be the number one thing that people seem to be asking. It's what's the panelists think the value of publishing MAs are? Should they go about doing it? Which might be a tricky question, I don't know. Suzy, perhaps you'd like to step up?
I was really hoping
I was like, I'm going to stay out of this one.
I really don't know the answer to that. I think, of course, they've got value because you are studying the industry on a much deeper level. I think the only advice I would give is to the sort of you know, the curators of these MAs to make sure that they are really practical and up to date in terms of this kind of a conversation. They need to make sure that the you know, that their dissertations are commercially viable, because I think not vanity publishing, sorry, I think you know, if you're doing a master's in publishing and you do your dissertation on something that you just really love in terms of books, it's not necessarily going to get you a job. So I think that's the only comment I would have, but that's so general. I'm nervous to say it, but I've said it now. So
Helen, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you've mentioned just previously about how PRH is kind of changing the way they look at and widening the scope, I guess. So does the publishing MA have, I guess, reduced value? Is that it? Sorry, is that a tricky way to
so
ask
difficult to describe it in that way. What I will say is that we have removed, well, as most people will probably know on this call, we've removed the need for degrees, full stop.
Yeah.
And that is something that's really important to us. And I think I've met people, recruited a lot, people from all different backgrounds, all different educational levels. And I think what's really important is the exposure, the understanding and the passion for what you do. And that they supersede anything else around your education. Because as I said, we don't have that requirement at Penguin, and that's very refreshing. I really enjoy the people that we meet because we don't have that requirement. So I think, again, everyone's individual, what works for you, but it's not a requirement for PRH.
A few questions are coming in about career changes, switching from older folk or people of advanced age, I guess, switching from other careers to the publishing industry. First, maybe Alexa, how do you manage do you think an entry-level person coming from another career should manage that transition?
Yeah, great question. I think to Helen's point just then about selling your story and your narrative, that's always going to be the only secret that there really is. And actually, I'll say sort of the same thing that I would have said about the degrees point, which is you don't get hired into any job because you have a degree, because you check these boxes. Sometimes you do, but really at the end of the day, employers are businesses, and they need to make money and they need to do it quickly. It's not really rocket science. I mean, even in rocket science, you have to make rockets and sell them. I don't know. So you need to be able to just explain, whether it's because you have a publishing MA or because you come from whatever industry you come from, the reasons why you know how to save a company some time and make a company some money. And what does your skill set mean in order to help a company meet their business goals? And especially in a situation like this, where everybody's a little bit scared, they're going to be a little bit conservative, they're not really sure what's going to happen to the industry. If you can come in and say, hey, I've never worked in publishing, but I worked at, I don't know, in fashion, right? And I know how to sell books in Topshop. And if you can go in and make that narrative explanation, you are just as compelling as anyone who's come from the publishing world, probably even more compelling because you have a fresh perspective and you can help sell books in new and different ways. So yeah, don't worry too much about why, again, you're wrong, but just convince me why you're right.
That's so true. Just that example is brilliant because, like I said at the beginning, we just don't know what we're going to see in terms of the retail landscape coming out. So actually that fresh thinking, that finding new channels to market is so key. So key.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got too excited.
It's all right. That's what we're here for, to get excited. One of the other thing a lot of people seem to be asking about is about regional diversity in general, and regional diversity. We sort of touched on it a wee bit, but maybe Suzy, can you kind of first talk us through how that's changing, perhaps? I know you guys have a office in Oxford, so it's not just London.
And we're about to launch our Scottish branch.
All right.
Scottish branch, one person up there. So Helen Harradine, I think she's online actually, so I'll wave, she'll love that. No, I mean, we've noticed massive steps forward from a lot of the bigger publishers opening up offices in Manchester, and Bristol and places like that. We've been recruiting nationally for a long time, but not necessarily in trade publishing. So we have a lot of clients already based in Manchester for the academic side of the business. So people like Manchester University Press, Liverpool University Press, and that kind of thing. So I mean, now is the time to push forward, I think, with that, to get different voices in. I think there's a real opportunity for us to embrace this change, this flexible and agile way of working, and sort of almost celebrate the fact that businesses are continuing to work remotely. I do think there are people that are not coping as well as others. There are some absolute superstars that have come to the front, are coming up with ideas, are creating layers of new content, are kind of really excelling in this environment. And there are others who are not coping as well. And I think moving forward, you know, if businesses do become sort of leaner machines in any way, they will take forward the people who can show that adaptability and flexibility much more. And so, you know, but I think with that in mind, I think it's going to break down the barriers of just hiring in London. Definitely.
Yeah, certainly will for us.
Yeah, right. Brilliant.
Yeah. And now is the time to also, candidates, like, pipe up and pitch yourself and go introduce yourself, because again, everybody's stuck at home. It's not like there's some version of London that's back to work. Like,
yeah.
And so, you know, if you are in Liverpool or if you're in Hull or wherever, like,
yeah,
just you go ahead and pipe up and say, hey, like, everyone's gonna be at home for the next 3 months. Like, you know, even if you just want to be extra cheeky and say, I think that I could help you, you know, moderate your Zoom panel, or I think that I would love to do some admin if you have some extra admin work and I'm just going to do it from my house here in Harrogate, like, whatever, like, that no one is seeing each other in person. So you have a real opportunity to do that kind of networking. And it's funny because once you're sort of on the inside and they're like, oh yeah, of course, like so-and-so, like, yeah, she's always been based in Yorkshire. No one remembers why. And it's like, oh yeah, COVID, like, there we go. Now she's been there for 20 years. So you go do it.
I do think that the regional offices and the people hiring there first need to be quite a sort of different type in a way, in terms of being very compelling and likable to their region as well. Because the reason I think a lot of publishers are moving that way is to be able to have more accessibility to regional authors. And so you've got to be able to network with the regional authors and be able to, you know, easily sign them, kind of thing. So there is that aspect as well.
I'm just curious about your thoughts on this. It's just occurred to me. Do you think that COVID crisis will have a permanent change in how people think about remote working, remote learning? Will companies kind of decide, you know, that they can run these leaner, as Suzy said, leaner, more efficient machines, sort of with people working from home? Will that maybe be a long-term effect?
Was that one for me, Tom? I couldn't.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, right. It's a good job I was listening. Certainly. So, out of all this uncertainty and rapid change, that we've seen some really positive change, and you know, the way we're interviewing candidates, you know, as and when the recruitment picks up, we're going to be moving more of it online and then bring people in, you know, as a final stage face to face, because it makes it more accessible. It means, you know, it's easier for people to take time out and do the interviews from home with the hiring managers online. We'll be able to still, you know, create tests and tasks for people to be done online. So there's loads of really positive learnings from this. So you as candidates will probably see a difference in recruitment processes. And also as a business, yes, I mean, definitely we need to take the learnings from this. And none of us know, and anyone that says they know is not telling the truth. None of us know what the future of work looks like yet. And I mean that from a location perspective, how often we'll be in the office, how often we'll be working from home, that kind of perspective. And I think it's just really important that we stay agile and we change with the need. So I'm definitely expecting it to be a difference. I'm expecting there to be a difference in my role, for example. So yeah.
Helen, are you finding that you're having to spend a lot of money to change these processes, or are you just simply moving on to the platforms available?
So no, not particularly. No, because I mean, we have Zoom corporate accounts and things like that to enable us to have the interview and the FaceTime with people that's so important. But no, not particularly. I think once everything's set up, it'll stabilize.
Sorry, Tom, I've just stepped on your toes, but I just wanted to ask that question for the smaller publishers out there, because I think that everybody can embrace this, and you don't have to stop hiring because you can't see somebody physically, and you can still test and do lots of interviewing online.
We have a few minutes left, so maybe we should just come down to final thoughts. Alexa, what do you think you should, what words of wisdom do you think you should give to the entry-level people coming into the industry right now?
I think that my number one thing that I would want you to walk away with is, I know that it feels like the world is on pause right now. And to Suzy's point, a lot of, internships have been pulled, and to Helen's point, they're not doing work experience. And I get a lot of entry-level people who get really hung up on the idea of, well, I can't do anything because I need to wait to get an internship that counts. And like, you want like official experience. And I'm just going to stick it in your head, just this like crumb of an idea, which is, what if you figured out a way to get that experience on your own? What if you went and learned that software program on YouTube? Or what if you went and edited a like COVID zine for a nursing home down the street from you? Or like what could you do in order to use this time wisely? And I know everybody's panicked, and I know everybody's stressed about money and starting your career and all those things, but like, if you just wait for the official roles to come back, a lot of people are going to be waiting. So what could you do instead?
And Helen, what would you say to folks?
I would say that this is a moment in time where things are up in the air and there aren't as many opportunities, but give us time as an organization to plan and establish, what the future of work looks like. And while we're doing that, I would definitely say, do your research so that when the roles do come up, you're best positioned to apply and stand out.
Research at the bookseller. Yeah. I don't know. Suzy, last one to you. Do final thoughts, perhaps?
First of all, thank you to my fantastic panelists. I've truly enjoyed this webinar, so thank you. There's not much more to kind of add to that, other than to just try and put your minds at rest a little bit. That this is, as Helen and Alexa said, it's a transitional period. Nobody saw this coming, and we're dealing with it as best we can as an industry. The industry will come back, jobs will be advertised again, be ready for that moment. And the other thing to note is just that the publishers tend to fare quite well in unfortunate economic environments. So if there is one place to be right now, it is publishing. But just enjoy the next few weeks with all this amazing content available to you, upskill in something you feel genuinely and authentically passionate about. And very good luck to you all on those next applications. Please keep in touch with us at Inspired. We're on Twitter at Inspired Jobs, and we've got a blog with loads of helpful advice as well.
I came into this webinar quite feeling a bit despondent about the industry at the moment, the jobs, but I feel a bit more optimistic, a lot more optimistic after talking to you guys. Thanks so much, Suzy Astbury, Helen Firth, Alexa Shoen. Go visit PRH's website, go buy Alexa Shoen's book. Yeah, show it again, Alexa, thank you.
There we go.
And go visit Inspire Selection. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.